So Deryl interviewed me for the job that I'm now in, and
like
so
myself.
I spilled my heart out, hey, and I was like, this is who I am, right on the table. But now I get it a little bit from your angle, eh? That's so funny, especially around the native plants and that whole thing, eh?
Yeah, and that kind of free-range life, you know.
Yeah.
But then when I was about 16, and then I wanted to make some money. So I wanted to make some money. Dad said he'd hire me because, you know, whatever. So he fired me on my first day, actually.
I learned this about you because I did social services, so I'm like social sciences. I see. But how did you go horticulture, social sciences? Like, what was that? Kia ora, welcome. I'm Zoe. I'm so excited to have you join me on this podcast that celebrates and supports women from all walks of life. Whether we're chatting with inspiring wahine, sharing real stories, or diving into the things that truly matter to us, we've got it all covered. It's time to shine a light on the incredible women doing amazing things right here in Aotearoa and beyond. So hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and come join the kōrero. We can't wait to have you join us. Kia ora everyone, welcome back to Golden Glimmers. Today I am joined by Deryl Penjueli. So she is a powerhouse professional and a proud mum of 3. So Deryl's career has spanned leadership roles across the Ministry of Justice, Waikato District Health Board, Waikato District Council. She's worked as a consultant. She's founded her own activewear brand, Koko Active, and now she's my manager at Downer. So in this episode, we will talk about her journey through career shifts, motherhood. I'll be asking how she creates space for growth, balance, and bold moves in every season of life. So welcome, Deryl.
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks for having me.
So I'm just going to tuck that under there, nice and tidy. Let's get warmed up with just a few basic questions. So first one, what's your favourite drink?
Ooh, Coke Zero.
Oh,
Sad.
nice. Yeah, I love Coke Zero. And Sprite Zero is joining the crew quite quickly as well.
Yeah,
nice.
If I had said anything else, my family would have totally picked me up on that.
Yeah. If I you say something like some ginger.
Like something water.
Concoction.
No, absolutely not.
Not true. Okay, cool. What's your star sign?
Virgo.
Oh, yeah. Do you think that you align with the kind of...
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. So elements of perfectionism, judgmental, all that stuff. Yeah, I can definitely see some Virgo traits in me. My daughter happens to be a Virgo as well. I can definitely see some of Virgo.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
Okay, so Virgo. And when it comes to water, so 3 choices. Would you rather be in like a hot tub or a spa bath, a cold plunge, or like a dip in the ocean or river?
Probably a dip in the ocean or river. We've got a spa at home, and it was something that I really wanted. Like I thought it was, like I kind of made it.
Yeah.
It sounds really weird.
Yeah.
And we used it all the time, but we haven't used it for a really long time because it kind of sometimes just feeling like having a bath with other people. Yeah.
Yeah, communal. Yeah.
But, cool. But much rather the beach. I find that much more, kind of gives you a bit of life, really.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. Perfect. Perfect way to start. Now, getting into this, my plan is to kind of start in your early years, what your childhood looked and felt like, moving into, a bit of study, mahi, journey with motherhood, then trying to balance it all. Yeah. Talk to me about your childhood. What did that look and feel like?
Yeah, cool. So I was the youngest of 4 girls. We grew up on a farm in Tikawiti in Tiruhi Portai, so in the King Country. We had a really looking back, really idyllic kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, nice.
We were really free-range kids, but like yourself actually.
Yeah.
Mum would just pack a basket of food for Dad and tell us to go and listen for a tractor somewhere in the wilderness, and that's where we'd kind of wander around.
Yeah.
We had, motorbikes and horses and all sorts of things, and we just rambled for the whole time. We were really fortunate, I think, with our parents. Dad was, he had these 4 little girls, but he really involved us in the farm, and he just kind of instilled in us that, you just get on with it, just do it, like no one's going to do it for you and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So, we were really, really fortunate and things. So, grew up there, Mum was a school teacher and for a period of time, but mainly a homemaker. And so we had sheep and beef and, just veggie gardens, like the whole kind of Kiwi, when you think Kiwi lifestyle, we definitely had that.
Did you go to a rural kind of primary school?
Sort of. So we would have gone to a more rural school, but the bus went into town instead of out of town. And so Mum and Dad were kind of like, well, you get on the bus and you get off at the first school that comes by.
Yeah.
And so I was really privileged, actually. We went to a primary school called Centennial Park Primary. And by the time I got there, there were very few Pākehā children. Like I was probably the only Pākehā girl at that school by the time I was about 9.
Yeah.
So before that, there was us and a handful of other families with kids, like Pākehā kids that went there.
Yeah.
It was a roll of probably about 170 kids.
Yeah.
So, we were definitely the minority at that school, which was actually, like I say, a real privilege when we look back on that.
It's the opposite of my husband's upbringing.
Oh, really?
Like he's like one of the only Māori families in Queenstown.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So that opposite sort of journey. It'd be really funny for you two to meet and kind of compare stories from the other side.
Definitely, yeah. So we had like a bilingual unit that was set up at the school and things, and Te Reo Māori and tikanga and all of that was really part of it. So we were really part of the Māori community there. In fact, our farm was across the road from one of the marae up there. So, and some of the land that Dad had previously either been Māori land or it was land that we leased from that particular iwi group.
Yeah.
So we had, Dad really instilled that a lot in us, and he grew up in that area as well. Like he was like second or third generation, and some of the land that we had, we were the first Pākehā people ever to set foot on it. So again, a real privilege. And we found, actually, when Dad was, turning the land into productive farming, like we found heaps of quite historic artefacts on the farm that have been gifted back to the local iwi and things like that.
Yeah.
We've got some plants on the farm that they thought were extinct in New Zealand and really weren't, because they were just in this little enclave kind of thing. So we're real cool. And so at school we were into everything like sports and all of that. Dad was on the he'd sell raffle tickets to the local mob, and we were just everybody was equal. It was kind of really cool.
Yeah,
we had this cool thing.
This is so interesting hearing this, because I mean, it sounds so similar to my upbringing. I can see. So Deryl interviewed me for the job that I'm now in, and so
myself.
I spilled my heart out, and I was like, "This is how I am," right on the table. But now I get it a little bit from your angle. That's so funny, especially around the native plants and that whole thing.
Yeah, and that kind of free range life, and. My parents, like, we were probably considered quite rich compared to some of the community down there. But Dad and Mum really kept us grounded. We had people, lots of people in our home and that sort of stuff, lots of kids over. It was just noise, and, and they got growled and treated the same and done all that and that sort of stuff, but also got opportunities that we took for granted, but they never had in their life, doing baking and, having just, picking something up out of the ground and eating it and things like that. And we had like funny things too, like we had a pet eel for a while that we used to go and feed like jelly meat to, and a pet hawk, and so real kind of just real grassroots kind of living.
That's so funny, and I hear what you say. It's almost like even if that is considered like a privileged kind of upbringing, when you grow up on a farm, and you're wearing gumboots, and you're like always got dirty hands, and like you're out in the elements when it's not great and stuff either. It doesn't feel bougie, Like it's like we're from a farm, and I would just wish that we had tar sealed roads and like a paved driveway or something. That would be cool.
One of the naughtiest things I did when I was really little was I was really jealous of the kids that got to walk home from school.
Same.
And we used to have to catch a bus. And so one day I was about 6, and we lived like, I don't know, 5K out of town or whatever, up this kind of rural road, trucks a whole bit. And I deliberately missed the bus to walk home and started myself walking home and that sort of stuff. And my sisters went past in the bus and saw me. I wasn't on the bus. And I think they originally thought I had like sport and I played piano and bits and pieces. And then they were like, oh my gosh, what is she doing? And so they must have like run up the drive. And next thing Mum was coming to pick me up and I was in a lot of trouble. But yeah, I guess it was a bit of a thing, and my sisters would definitely say I probably pushed the limits a little bit, and they probably put it down to me being the youngest, but I think it was probably just my
who
kind
you
of
are
style.
at the core.
Yeah.
It's also funny being, well, I'm one of 3 girls, not 4, but with the foster kids and that kind of thing. I would say that I was one of four. But it's really funny. My cousin has 3 little girls, and it makes me laugh because it's just like a little insight into what it must have been like for my mum and dad. And it's just like, I think that there's an outside perception. 3 little girls, they must be super well behaved and that sort of thing. But it's not like girls are pretty feral at times
they
too.
Can be real feral, because
yeah.
Mum had this thing that when we went to school, so on the farm, and that we could wear like what she called boys' clothes, you know, jeans and stuff like that. And but at school we always had to wear dresses and skirts. It was just a thing. And so, you know, like trying to do a high jump at school when you're like 5 foot nothing anyway, and a full-on ankle-length dress, it's like amongst all of these local kids where you stick out anyway, because you know, it was just kind of a bit hilarious, really.
And then how about like intermediate and high school? I'm guessing that your primary and intermediate was kind of joint.
Yeah, so we had full primary and that. So there wasn't really an intermediate in Teakuri.
Yeah.
It was just these local schools, quite competitive amongst each other and all of that sort of thing. And then, graduated Centennial Park and went to Teakuri High School.
Yeah.
And again, youngest of 4, so the teachers were well versed with my parents and my sisters. And so, you know, it's funny, you know, in those days too, they had so much expectation of who you were and what you were going to be like just because of who came before you
100%.
and things. And I found it actually quite a culture shock. I found, because being at Centennial Park and being really immersed in the whānau there and te reo Māori and, you know, and actually being not fluent at all, but really having a great understanding of kaupapa Māori practice and things like that. And then even though Teakuri High School, you'd think was the same kids, 300, you know, kids, it became a real slight, like, you know, it was really kind of used against you in a lot of ways. So you were kind of like, I remember, because we had streamed classes, so I was in one of the, you know, higher academic classes and things like that. And, you know, kids saying to me, if we had to do a presentation, oh, I bet you're going to do it in, are you going to do a dance, or, you know, you're going to do it in te reo Māori, kind of as this,
negative,
you know, niggy thing, you know, like this thing to niggle at you, to get at you. And so over time, you know, kind of lose a bit of identity. You don't really fit with the kids you grew up with anymore because you're in different classes, but you don't really fit with this new crowd. And you're a bit displaced. And, you know, and over that experience kind of lost, you know, definitely not my sense of belonging or manaaki and that sort of stuff, but definitely detached from it, and definitely lost a lot of the te reo Māori understanding that I was cultivating at that time, which is really sad and really difficult. So, so things where like I was a proud member of our kapahaka class and, you know, really all of that, just really pulling myself away from that as much as I could and trying to immerse myself in other things just to fit in.
Was that almost like your first experience of like imposter syndrome where you're like, where do I fit?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like definitely. And not really fitting or belonging anywhere either because culturally and then your values based is really built on what you were raised with, right, in those formative years. And so when you're challenged in that space, it becomes really a bit of an identity crisis, bit of a who am I? Am I good enough to be in this space, but I don't really fit here? I can't really stand up in any space. And so that was really interesting to reflect on.
100%.
And still impacts me today sometimes where, you know, that fitting, where is it exactly? Because you belong to so much, but you don't belong.
Fully.
Yeah.
I fully resonate with what you're saying. But from probably more of a religion, cultural kind of background. So like my whānau quite Christian, like
Yeah.
quite, you know,
Yeah.
we said grace every single night, and like my parents, they wake up in the morning. My dad makes my mum a cup of coffee. They'll like read something out of the Bible, or, you know, word of the day or something like that. Like it was definitely a big thing growing up. And I remember, like, you know, I transitioned through a few different schools and stuff, but there was a new Catholic high school that opened in Nelson. And so my sister went to it when she was year 9, which was like foundation kind of year. And then they sent me to there when I went to high school. But I'd already gone to like a Waimea intermediate, which was just like a co-ed kind of public intermediate. So all my friends were there. And it was really hard for me to settle into that Catholic school because I wasn't Catholic. Like mum was Anglican, dad was Presbyterian. So that's a whole other thing. Like I've been to church, but like I hadn't done a Holy Communion and like all of those sorts of things. And I didn't go to the same church. I didn't go to the same like preschool and stuff. So all of these kids, they went to youth group together. They had been really, and a lot of them were cousins and stuff as well, because it's big Catholic families. But yeah, I found it really hard to settle in there. Like my sister had a totally different experience, and I think it's because it was the first year that the school had been put together versus 5 years down the track when I came in. But also being someone's little sister, right? Yeah, they're like, they're like, when are you going to get hot like your sister? And I'm like, I don't know, when I hit puberty. Like, I'm 13 and it's not happening yet, so hopefully soon. But you know, those little things of being someone's little sister is a weird thing as well. And then also, you know, if you're from a farm, and that's a little bit different than fitting in with the like village or town kids too. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. And like my, and I was probably a bit mouthy. My dad, you know, he was a really great thinker, and he'd always debate us, and we'd have some really great conversations and things like that. And now that he's gone, that's one of the things that I miss, although it used to drive me nuts, was just that kind of, you know, that critical thinking
challenge
of everything. And so, you know, we had family that were there. My grandparents were in the town and all of that sort of stuff, cousins, that sort of thing. We weren't particularly close family though. Partially we were really busy on the farm and, you know, and that sort of stuff. But yeah, like Dad, even with our, so we were raised Presbyterian family as well, but we couldn't really get to church that often but like you are, it's a bit of a drive from the farm, and, you know, Sunday you're doing other things and that sort of stuff. But he always, and my grandfather always used to, you know, challenge our thinking around, you know, some of the fundamentals of faith, and talk about what intrigued them the most, but also about balance, and that people, like, you know, like respect, all of those things are really important, but also that you don't need to be in a physical space to have a belief system or a faith system or be just a fucking good human. You know, you actually don't need to sit in a space to read all of that. You know, you can learn that in other ways through connection with people or nature or whatever.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we kind of stopped the church scene. So I have my sister Casey's 5 years older than my sister Melissa's 10 years older. But in Nelson, women's soccer is played on a Sunday.
Oh, right.
So by the time that they got to high school, Sundays were kind of taken by that, and Dad would coach. So it kind of dropped off from there. But yeah, my parents, and I think that probably that was the catalyst of that stuff kind of folding back quite a lot as well. But they obviously would have loved me to probably continue a little bit harder down that path and stuff, but they also let us do our own thing, you know? Like my mum will still send me little messages, like, you know, about my foot. She's like, I'm praying for you that it'll get better or whatever, but she's not, you know, like calling me and being like, let's pray together and that kind of, like there's a level where it kind of stops. But, you know, myself and my sisters are kind of all on different paths and different stages as well.
And because my mother-in-law as well, she's, you know, really active with her church and things like that. And it's a really beautiful part of what makes up who she is as a person, right? And, you know, she's the same, you know, when we've had various things happen in our family, which, you know, we'll undoubtedly touch on in this conversation. You know, she's always, you know, she turns to her faith, and she, you know, her Bible and her prayer groups and things like that, and gets a lot of comfort out of that. And despite me not being religious really on any platform, I get comfort out of that
Yeah,
too.
same. It's what you know, like it's
Yeah.
what's familiar.
Yeah, and I think it's really beautiful that, yeah, she uses that in a way to protect and get, send thoughts to the universe for what she wants is the best for her family or the things that are important to her. And so, you can't really be critical about that in any way. I don't think.
It's not hurting.
It's great. Yeah.
So you did your high school. Yep. And did you know that you wanted to like go on and study? Like what was kind of happening at high school for you?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like I was quite a high achiever at school, academically and in sport.
Yeah.
Invested a lot of myself into that. But I got quite sick of really early on people using the word potential at me, like, oh, you've got so much potential, you could go to you could take your swimming here or you could go there. And, potential is such a ambiguous word, and it was almost too big for me to understand what it was. It just felt like pressure. And so I really pushed against that pressure. And I remember at probably about sixth form, I did a couple of exams, and my exam average was about 90% and would get that pretty well without putting too much effort in because bit lazy that way. And I got in a mock exam I got like an 85%, and I remember overhearing an argument in the staff room about me setting a not basically failing my duties as a role model to others because I had dropped this grade and my potential now was low, and that what they had seen for me in my future wasn't going to happen as a result. And overheard that, and then it was actually raised at like an assembly, a bit about it and things like that.
What do you mean? So you overheard it literally just like coincidentally walking past?
Well, my mum worked at the school as well, and so we had a pretty open door policy to our staff room and bits and pieces. And Deryl's a pretty it's one of those names that when you hear it kind of
100%.
Must be for me.
Not the 100 other Deryls in the school.
I'm not an Anne. Where you'd be like, it's probably Anne Smith or Anne Jones or whatever. Yeah. When somebody says Deryl, you do kind of listen in, and so
were they talking to your mum?
I can't really remember. I mean, we're talking 30 odd years ago, but. I think she had been involved in parts of the conversation a little bit. Just they were, I think, probably trying to talk to her about how she might be able to assist me to refocus and all of that sort of stuff. And I was starting to probably rebel a bit, just generally then anyway, find myself whatever. And so kind of that was the end for me. I was just like, stuff it, I don't need that. And so so I wanted to be a farmer at that stage. I hadn't really been involved in the farm. Like that was one of the bones of contention between Dad and I, was that because I was so involved in sport and all of that, I was always away or in the weekends and stuff. And so my sisters would generally help more on the farm during that period. And when I did go and help, it was quite a negative experience, only because Dad assumed that I knew much more than I did. So he'd be like, hey, can you go down to the pond paddock and open the gate and let the blah, blah, blah. So I was thinking, where the hell is the pond paddock? What? There's like 7 ponds.
Oh my
where
God.
Are we?
I don't think I've ever talked to someone about actually being able to connect on that. Same. And I love the farm, but I wasn't shit hot on the farm at all.
Nah.
Fencing, shearing, what?
I was terrible.
Which way?
But then when I was about 16 and then I wanted to make some money. So I wanted to make some money. Dad said he'd hire me because, whatever. So he fired me on my first day actually too, which kind of put me, on my road. So he'd sent me out because I wanted to earn some money, I think, probably to buy, I don't know, some crap. And he was like, cool, you need to go and hoe that paddock of thistles. So, it's hard work. So I went out and hoed these thistles. Not great, apparently. So he came back and he said, terrible, you need to do it again. And I'd just spent all day hoeing these thistles. And so after much arguing on my part, I had to go and hoe these thistles again. And so I went to hoe these thistles, and then next thing I was like, and I was moaning to myself, I can still hear myself in my own head going, Dad's terrible and all of this. And it was over the head hoe, and I went like this, and then all this stuff started pouring out into the world, and I was like, what is it? And it took me a second to realise that I'd cut through the main water hose to the house from the tank. And so it's like all over the place. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, and turned off the tap, ran down. I was like, Mum, I've done this terrible thing. She was like, look, just fix it and just get on with your job, because Dad will be fine as long as you have just done the job right. Like, yeah, that's fixable, whatever. And so I was crying and went back up to the thing and put the hoe in the ground, broke it in half. Like the handle snapped. Came down to Mum again, oh my gosh, I broke this thing. She's like, that's okay, just deal with it. Like, when your dad comes back, just explain it to him, just be rational, and he'll be fine. Dad came back for lunch, and I said to him, oh, so Dad, like, you know, he's like, oh, you didn't finish the hoeing. And I said, well, no, like, you know, I did this and I did that. And he was like, oh, it's not good enough. I don't want it. You're not working for me anymore. And so then, oh my gosh. And so what I hadn't realised was that he had had a really terrible morning at the back of the farm and had like flipped a mower and had to walk back. So he was in a bit of a grump. And because I was so rational, when I spoke to him, he thought that I just didn't care, that I was being careless. And so he was like, nah, you're sacked. So my first experience of employment was with my dad, and I got fired on my first day.
Yeah.
And so I went and sulked in the veggie garden, and Mum convinced him to rehire me. And he came out, and we had a good discussion, and I was back on the payroll. And then I worked for him mainly over the holidays, and my sisters had largely left home by then, so it was kind of just me. And I really connected with it. I really just liked the physicality of it. And I really probably liked that you could just sort of toil away, you know, for the day and get dirty and do stuff. And you had you could see your achievement, like whether it was mowing a field or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Really loved shearing, really loved dagging, really got into it. And so I wanted to be a farmer. And so went to my guidance counsellor at the end of sixth form, and I was like, forget this school business, obviously. I want to be a farmer. So what do I need to do? And he said, oh, Deryl, I know that your family are farmers and things like that, but you're a woman, so you can't be a farmer.
Yeah. Okay.
He said, I would suggest maybe go into, you know, something softer like horticulture or floristry, you know, like do those things. And
just literally florals, eh?
Yeah, I know. And I was so blown away, actually. I didn't really know what to say, but I was actually also ready and desperate to leave home by that point.
Yeah.
I enrolled at a one tech course to do horticulture the next year, and left just after my 17th birthday, moved to Hamilton and started this horticulture course.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Well, let's say I learned I can back a trailer. I can't now. Don't ask me to. I could back a trailer through an obstacle course on a tractor. I could name lots of things, but we were about 6 months in, and we took a test, and one of the questions was how many seasons in a year and what comes after winter. And I thought, oh, maybe not my future. So I happened to be living at the university. The course was at Hamilton Gardens. It took me about an hour and a bit to walk each way each day, and it was an 8-hour course each day, and which wasn't much fun. And I was living in the hostels, like I said, halls of residence in the University of Waikato, so probably living a bit of a good life where walking an hour in the morning was a bit tough. And I also suffered a sporting injury at that point, so I'd been doing quite a bit of gym training and swimming training and things like that, and so I used that as an excuse pretty much, and I went and approached the Dean of Social Sciences and said, hey, got any space for me? And he said, yeah, we've got some courses, but you'll have to do a writing for uni papers course, so for second semester, but the only spaces we've got actually is in politics. What do you think?
Can I just pause you for a little second?
Yep.
I learned this about you because I did social services, so I'm like social sciences. I see. But how did you go horticulture social sciences? Like what was that?
It was just opportunity, and yeah.
that's so interesting, because they're like, for me, my parents, ran a foster home and that sort of thing, and I've been raised, around social workers and that sort of like, yeah, that's so funny.
It's a bit of a flip. So, but I mean, that was the only way I was going to be able to move forward and not do this horticulture stuff, you know. So it was kind of like limited options if I want to change tack and I want to do something different. And I've kind of realised horticulture probably isn't the direction travel. Maybe if it had got me to farming, but the opportunities that they were offering at the time was basically working for a council, in the gardening space, and career options were kind of limited at that stage. You could become head gardener or greenhouse keeper or whatever. And I just couldn't see my future there.
Yeah, fair.
So sort of thought, look, as long as I can get into uni and start something, then I can always change my major or my mind later on, whatever. Yeah. But as it happened, after the first semester, I'd pretty much completed half my major. So again, by then I just wanted to get to that next stage of life. We're all in such a hurry to grow up, right? And be an adult now in the wide world. So so I kind of rushed it, I guess.
How did you have the confidence to go talk to the dean? Where do you think you got that from?
I don't know. Do
you think maybe like being the youngest and you don't speak up, you get left behind, so you just...
Maybe. I think though, like part of me, I mean, again with my dad, he and my mum, they never really discouraged us from talking to anybody. You just talk to people. Yeah, people are people, right? Yeah. And so, like we always had a voice. Like I remember Dad thinking the most hilarious joke on the planet was he'd say, if somebody was like, I want to talk to the person that's makes the decisions in the house kind of on the phone or whatever, he'd be like, I'll get Deryl. Like that. Yeah. But so started that and went into more like Māori Pacific development and labour and trade as part of that secondary subject matter, and partially because it was availability and all of that, and really enjoyed that stuff. And so then the politics kind of morphed into global environmental politics of the time. And and then I graduated.
And what was your job after graduating? Because you've done quite a few jobs.
Yeah.
So what did that look and feel like for you?
Yeah. So in the space between sort of high school and university, I'd worked for Dad, but I'd also worked at a tyre mechanics place, just doing some stuff because I kind of wanted to, again, that physical work. Ended up upholstering buses for them, and then they hired me to do their family gardens and stuff, so just sort of mucked in. And then actually what happened was I'd been working in hospo, as most students do, and there was a job at Student Job Search at Wintec, actually, putting their student engagement surveys into numerical order, physically. Crazy. And so I got that job, and it was part-time, and then sort of morphed to full-time, and then a permanent position came up, and I thought, shit, I'm going to go for it. Warm offices, nice people, pretty chill. Computers were just sort of coming out. And so I got a job in what was kind of their enrolment sort of centre before there was enrolment centres, and we used to process like withdrawals and issue ID cards and stuff like that, and work with the finance team. And so a permanent job came up there, and so I applied for that and I got it, and I thought, shit, I made 26 grand a year, I'm on it. And and then so my career kind of developed from there though, so pretty quickly I moved into kind of more leadership roles, and then I was offered jobs where teams, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but where teams had perhaps members that had performance issues or what have you, and they kind of just threw me in there to manage them, to either see what they could do, whether they could pick their socks up or whether we needed to perhaps, find a different pathway for them. And so, they just asked me to do these things, and I'd just be like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? Give it a go. And so worked in the academic unit space, which was kind of helping to write some of the curriculum and get it sorted through NZQA and things. And it was pretty interesting. And as it happened, my main job was kind of on the first floor, and then academic unit was kind of on the second floor, but a few doors down from the HR team. And so I got to know them quite a lot. They were lovely ladies, always chatty, wore great outfits, had great shoes. And
that is a thing in HR,
it really
right?
was.
Yeah.
And like in those days, you know, they wore like, you know, business skirts and shoes from, you know, what's Mere Piaki now, and,
Yeah.
you know, always had the hair done, makeup and stuff, whereas I was like, looked like I've been pulled through a bush backwards, you know. And so I was kind of like, I want to do what they're doing because I want nice shoes and a great outfit.
Yeah.
And so that kind of piqued my interest in HR.
Relatable, yeah.
Yeah. And so from there, at that stage, because HR was still like a developing or emerging kind of discipline.
Yeah.
It wasn't what it is today. And it was a real funny thing. Like you kind of needed a job to get experience, but you couldn't get a job without experience. And a lot of people didn't have, like there weren't any real qualifications.
Yeah.
They were just sort of coming out. Yeah, and so I worked at Winter and then got pregnant, and I got this contract of fixed term. They were rolling out a new student information system that they'd bought, which was, you know, the first time it was kind of all going online and this module and stuff. And they had contracted in this company from Auckland, and they were doing all the testing, but they needed a trainer, and there was no training guides or anything. So they gave me 8 weeks to develop all the training guides and train all of the different cohorts of staff depending on what their usage needed to look like, or interaction with the system, from the CEO to the frontline new enrolment advisors, and deploy and deliver that. And so I did that. Yeah.
In 8 weeks, no pressure, right?
No.
You're like, sorry, just have to build something from scratch with nothing to use. But no worries.
Never used the system myself except for the testing environment. So yeah, did that, and then went off and had my first baby.
Yeah, and how was that? Like you have 3 children, and you have had like a very iconic career. Like we're just really getting to the start, but like how did that feel? And did that feel like a bit of a did it feel like a challenge? Like was it like, oh well, I want to have babies, but I'm on the path, or did you feel okay? Like
I felt really good about it. Like I
cool.
felt like it was, you know, my babies are a blessing, and and I've got 3 children, but I've actually had 4 children, and so so we had our Nay first. She was she's my beautiful honey, and she's actually down here in Christchurch now, forging her own path, which is really great to see. And it's hard as a parent to let them free, but that's what we do. But yeah, I was really a bit nervous, and we had goals. We wanted to do certain things, and so I knew I couldn't be out of the workforce for long. And I was really ambitious as well at that stage. You know, like if somebody had offered me the job to be the CEO, I would have taken it. You know,
yes.
I was on the drive, you know. And so just really fortunate. She was a really great baby, and my husband's really supportive, and so he adjusted his schedule and bits and pieces to be able to work nights so that I could work days, and that we could manage our little whānau, a little growing whānau. And so I finished work about 9 days before I had her, and I was back in the workforce about 5 months after she was born.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me leaving it so late and coming back. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And so then so I decided that I wanted to get into HR a bit more properly, or more established leadership roles. And so I pursued a role that was actually working for a disability mental health charity as a service manager there. I'd applied for a job. I'd worked at the university in between the Wintec, I'd started at Wintec, then left, and then come back again, delivered this contract, had this baby. Then I decided I wanted to be a bit more deliberate about that, and so I got a job in Te Awamutu, which is about 30 minutes from where I live, I guess, and I applied for this job, but I didn't get it, but they asked me to sort of run their recruitment agency. So they were a day service disability mental health provider for people who had quite often had quite an institutionalised life. Day programs, they had various policies in place, but because the funding is so strapped in that area, they had been innovative in setting up businesses to help to subsidise some of that funding. So one of them was a recruitment agency. They also had a cafe, and one of the first internet cafes in Te Awamutu, and they had like a laundromat. And so part of that model was to pull in funding from alternative sources to assist with the delivery of their programs. Another was to provide tangible employment opportunities for their people to then transition and give back and really be integrated with the community. So quite a beautiful kind of ethos, really, when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
We had some very high needs people that came to us, and we didn't separate between, so, you know, if we had lunch, everybody had lunch together. It wasn't like the disabled or mental health, they sit over there, you sit here. It was very integrated, which was a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Cool. And then you've had like a few roles in there in terms of the DHB and what's the other one? DHB and the council. Yeah. So how are those experiences? I don't know which one went first. And
so I stayed at the disability place until I had my second baby. And then wanted something a bit closer to home. So I got a job actually about 12 weeks after he was born for a kitchen importing place, and that was good. They'd gone through some acquisitions, so they needed a bit of support, but that was only very short. And then I got a short-term contract actually working with the DHB. So I went there. I ended up working part-time for them. Really highly unionised environment, hadn't been used to that. About 8,000 staff, definitely wasn't used to that. Multi-site, all of that sort of stuff. But shit, it was fun, and it was bloody hard work, and we really dealt more in the disciplinary performance space and things like that. But, you know, you're talking about a business that's 24 hours, 7 days a week. People don't wake up in the morning, even some of the workers, and go, hey, that's where I want to be. So, you know, the people you're interacting with, often in crisis, often dealing with people in crisis, and also, you know, you have this flux of, you know, the unknown who's going to walk through your door. And about, you know, 8,000 people, we probably would get about 1,500 to 2,000 people visiting the sites during the day. So that just changes the nature of that. So, yeah, really interesting work, really great. It's a shame that, you know, and it's got to be this, but health looks after patient first, which is, of course, it has to. But at times, the people looking after those patients don't get kind of the same, the same sorts of expressions of support and value. And often the context is quite negative for people doing really, really hard things. And the public and the media tend to have a perception that's negative. And so, yeah, it can be quite a difficult space.
Yeah.
But, you know, and part of reconciling that in my mind was that we've got some towns that are about the same size as that population of people. So, you know, the births, the deaths, the marriages, the affairs, all of that kind of chaos exists.
It's a true reflection of society, right? And like every touch point from rich to poor and everything in between.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, every age, every stage, every life. Yeah, so it was really cool because I love like exploring the difference of people. I really love these kinds of conversations. I'm doing so much talking today. It's really uncomfortable for me. Because I really love understanding other people's dimension, dynamic experiences and what that brings and the richness of that, because I think it really adds to mine. So, yeah, you know, you have 8,000 people at your fingertips. It can be, they're good days.
Do you think, like one thing that I've noticed about you is that you're calm? And do you think that that's a result of maybe working in such a fast-paced and kind of intense environment that you're almost like, is that it? You know, like unless someone's on fire or whatever, then you're kind of like, you've seen it all, done it all, which gives you great perspective into what matters and what consumes you and then what doesn't.
Yeah, I guess so. It enables me, I guess, I don't know, I try and take a bit of a step back rather than rush in, because I think somebody that's in crisis or in panic actually doesn't need that. You know, they just need a little bit of a calm and, you know, and that sort of stuff. And I always really believe that we're in it together anyway. Mm-hmm. So how can I help? What are the limitations of my skills? What do you bring? What do we bring to get us both through that? Mm-hmm. And I think when people are in that panic stage, whatever it might be, like a flare up at work, you know, and this needs to happen or this has happened in my life, actually, yeah, they need to know they're not alone. And I think that there's some real power in that. So, you know, I've gone through my own ups and downs. So So while I was working at the DHB, working through all of those things and had some amazing opportunities, managed the forensic mental health unit and, we had people die on our site, like staff, and we dealt with some really difficult situations, but, you get through it and it doesn't take away that situation by being panicked about it. I guess it's just about working through it methodically and pretty pragmatic. And so during that time, I also suffered some grief myself. So I actually got pregnant with our third baby and had been working really hard in that space. And there's one thing that stands out for me at the time. I was nearing the end of my pregnancy, and a lady, we were doing a project to rebrand the delivery suite for the hospital, and she'd come up with a name, and it was a beautiful name, but it had some heartbreak in it. I felt it was a Māori name. And I said to her, it's not very happy, delivery space is happy. And she said, Deryl, when sometimes it can be the darkest place on earth. And it was an experience I actually had a few months later. So I could, that sticks out in my mind. Yeah, so it's cool. We were really fortunate too, though. So I think in grief and loss, one of the things that I've learned over time is perspective. And so we had a full-term unexpected stillbirth where our son we had a phantom heart rate right through the delivery of our child, and he was born perfect on the outside, but he'd passed about 24 hours earlier. Yeah. And so that was really unexpected. But, I had the privilege of working with the staff and the people in that space as an outcome of that. That helped me. I had already 2 beautiful children, so I knew that my body could do it, that, there wasn't something wrong with us, wrong with me. It created a level of empathy I didn't have before, and we didn't really have to make any difficult decisions. He was born as he was. Yeah. We didn't have to make any really difficult choices that we had to really work through. So there was a lot of grace in that. And so, so then I moved back to the DHB and I worked there, and I focused on our little kids, and little kids bring a whole heap of resilience because you've just got to keep moving. And we named a star after our son that we talked to every night with our kids as they were growing, and he's very much a part of our family.
Oh, Deryl, I've not been through that, but my sister Casey, she had a little girl, and then she had a few miscarriages, but she had Hunter, so he was full term. She gave birth, and he passed away like an hour later. Yeah. And that changed our family forever. Yeah, it changed everything.
It really does. And and I think again, what a tough experience. For her, that to go through that process, and that not only that initial process, which is tough, but that prolonged period of loss, and we didn't have that to some degree, so so I've got a real sense of compassion and empathy for people that do, and feel very humbled that as difficult as it was, actually on the spectrum, we actually did okay. So I continued to work in that space, and then I moved into forensic mental health, like I said, and during that year it was a tough year, and part of that was really having to build some internal credibility and get over, work through this family, and during that time my husband lost his job. I had another baby, but my husband lost his job, my mother passed away following a lung cancer diagnosis after she had 3 weeks, and within 24 hours my dad's only brother, he's got a number of other siblings, passed away in 24 hours of each other. And so
the year from hell.
Yeah, so it was a lot. But we went on to have another son. He was actually due a year following the passing of our son that we lost. And every year we actually, as a family, so we, on Javier's birthday, that was his name, he would have been 16 this year, so his birthday's the 8th of February, and we celebrate his birthday, so we purchase a heart to hang on our wall to symbolically kind of piece together ours. And a friend of mine had bought me a little hut. She didn't know what to do when we lost him, so that's a tradition we continue. We have a birthday cake, We sing them happy birthday, and very unenvironmentally friendly of us, but we write messages on helium balloons, and wherever we are, we let them off together, and the kids take the day off school so that we can really come together as a family again.
Yeah, that's so special and important to keep that memory there and just instill those values as well, right? Because you also have children, and
That's right.
as much as we hope and pray for smooth conception and delivery, it does happen. So I think you actually like holding space also for your children of being like, this could potentially be an outcome for you. We're kind of in some way normalizing it, but teaching them that they can still celebrate and remember, and it's not,
And I think that it's just part of me, like you're talking about the calm and things like that, and it's something that I have and that perspective. And I'm not a Pollyanna, but I definitely like to see the magic or the joy or the privilege in something, because I think it makes it much easier to kind of reconcile those feelings and challenges inside that you have that often bubble up. So, as I've progressed in my career and in my life, that's what I hope I also bring to the people that I work with or that work for me or that I work for, is some of that perspective that actually it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
We'll work through it together. We're in this together. We're committed. I see you. You are the culmination of the experiences that you've had to date. And you bring a lot of magic. So, how do we do that in a real positive kind of way? And like I said, it's not to play down anything or be a real Pollyanna, but just to kind of navigate this weird thing that's life that we get swept up on too. So from that year, though, I decided that work's really important, but it's not everything. And I really want to be able to look back on my life and see the real markers that I enjoy, and that I look back on my life with love, happiness, and can do that. Feel really kind of satisfied with what I've produced, and so that encouraged me to be really a bit more deliberate about where I put my effort and energy. And so that's why I from my experience at the DHB then moved into council. So moved away from operational management. So I managed forensic health, and I then ran the public health unit for 5 years, which was a completely different space for me again. And then I really enjoyed, I really enjoyed the human resource element, that connection and different kind of connection that you get. And so I deliberately targeted like the council. They had a really good marketing strategy at that time, which for my experience was actually true though. So that was really refreshing.
Cool.
Met some amazing people, and their vision at the time was about enabling communities to thrive, a bit like Down is now. And that really resonates with me because it connects the work that I do back to the people that interact with that work directly or indirectly. And so from an HR perspective, keeps me grounded too, to say that this change, how I treat this person, all of that, they're a part of this community, and I'm actually here to enable this community to thrive. This is my part in that. And so that is about addressing poor behaviour, because that poor behaviour and performance impacts on the outcome for the community. But I can do that with dignity and respect, so that person doesn't have to feel crushed, or it's just not right. They can move on.
Totally. Like there's hard conversations that need to be had, right? But it's also like you almost have this element of control around how that's delivered too, so it can be, honest, but with integrity and making sure people need some feedback and need to know where they're at. But you don't have to strip them of everything.
No, none is really important to me. Having people go through really hard things but come out intact is really important. So that's how I try and practice.
And council is a really interesting space, eh? Like, I think from the outside it's really easy. What do people say? Like, you go to the council to retire or whatever, but actually, there's so much that happens within the council that they're involved with from here to here, eh? And just having insight as to the whole of what's actually going on in the place that you live.
Yeah,
cool.
And that's eventually how I sort of ended up at Downer too. Like, I wanted to invest my effort and energy into great work with some great people, with some really good minds, but also needed a bit of stretch. I needed to feel part of something,
Yeah.
challenge it,
Yeah.
be a bit disruptive when I needed to be, and so that's where I found myself. And I love the people I work with. That's what keeps me coming.
Yeah.
I get to interact with amazing minds like your own, Zoe, and and really look forward to the journey. And I guess my job is to enable you to thrive. That's as a leader.
Yeah.
That's what I really want to do. I don't need to be in the front. I'm happy to be alongside, and and making sure that you reach your goals, and that you live. You're able to get get the outcomes that you're looking for as a person.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited, just to our audience, excited to work at Downer and work for Deryl. So it was really important to me after leaving my last role that I didn't just buy into the business, but I actually could see a leader that I was inspired genuinely by, that I actually felt like a genuine connection where I didn't have to necessarily sell myself because they could see.
Yeah.
I've spent my whole life trying to be seen and prove my worth and that sort of thing, to find someone that could meet me in the middle and be like, hey, you don't know everything, but I'll teach you some stuff. That's actually what I wanted and what I was craving and needed. So I'm excited about that. I've got 2 questions to finish up.
Yep.
So firstly, I'd love to know what you'd tell your little self. Like, it doesn't have to be career related or whatever, but like one of mine is like, I just wish I had a little bit more fun. Like I think I'm a playful person by nature, but I also am very serious and I was always on the mission and, that kind of thing. So mine would be like, slow down and have a little bit of fun and enjoy where you're at. What would yours be?
Mine would be I think I've navigated my career by good luck rather than good fortune. A lot of the jobs I've been shoulder tapped for and I've gone, hey, well, I'll give it a go. And with that though, that can sometimes erode your belief in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so my thing would be, just believe, just believe in yourself. And carve your own path sometimes. It's okay.
Love that. And then secondly, someone that wants to eventually end up with a career like yours, and obviously there's been like different ways and stuff, but what would you say? Like if there was someone that wanted to end up where you are now, what would you say? What advice
my advice would probably be courageous and talk to people, so I think part of how I've navigated my career, like I said, I've been shoulder tapped, but that's because people got to know me.
Yeah.
Because I just was like, I'm not into hierarchy, so I could walk up to the CEO or whatever and just be like, hey, how's your day going? And we'd have a chat, and then I'd find out a bit about them and stuff like that. And so I think, and then I could go, cool, I really like that person. I want to understand more of what they do and where they fit because I want to spend more time with them, or I like what I'm hearing about this, so I could, maybe I could explore that. And, but yeah, just don't be shy.
Yeah.
Go and, like rock up to, if they're like, hey, I want to be in HR and that, and they've obviously watched this amazing podcast and they go, oh, Zoe, oh shit, I want to reach out to her via LinkedIn or whatever. And I'm just going to ask the question, how do I get where you are? Because most of us are happy to have that conversation, right?
We want to, eh? Well, especially if you're in HR, you actually you're like, what? You want to work in HR? Like, I'll be your buddy. Come in.
Like, come,
but firstly, I'll tell you what it's really like, and it's not just the cute outfits.
Nice shoes.
You've got to be ready to cry for at least your 20s, eh? I think that chunk, there's going to be a bit of that.
Or carry a lot of tissues in your pocket because you end up being in front of a lot of people that cry.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing for HR people was being like, I think a lot of people have really good intention where they're like, oh, I want to help people be in HR, and I think that one of the things that I've always got to like break to them is, look, like
there's a balance for that, eh?
And you'll be having some of the best conversations with people, empowering them on their career and decisions and that kind of thing. But also, you can be the delivery person of some really tough news,
life-changing news.
So you've got to be pretty adaptable and kind of like a chameleon for most days, eh?
Yeah, definitely. And I think exactly.
It's not Oprah. You get a pay rise. You get a pay rise.
No. And you kind of like, the other thing I'd say about HR and why I went into ops management and back is because HR's got a massive span of influence, right? It's got quite low depth of decision making. So if you are, you want to make decisions and change the world and HR may not be the space for you, whereas if you go into other lines of management or leadership, you generally have a narrower span, but way more ability to make change. We talk about risk and we give advice and support, but often the manager will do whatever they want anyway.
They'll ignore it until we go blue in the face.
And then we're like, oh, so it didn't work. Okay, we'll help you clean it up.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We're at our hour. So, Deryl, thank you so much for coming on the show. We need to do a part 2 next time you're down. Just a quick note, Deryl's from Hamilton, so she was actually just down here for mahi, and then I asked her if she would come on the show with me, which is super cool. So thank you so much for coming on.
That's right.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. This episode will be available on Spotify, Plains FM, and YouTube, and we'll see you next time.
Ka kite.